This particular session is a fun one for me because this has been a part of my life for the last 10 or 15 years. It's called Your Enterprise REMI Video Playbook. So I'm going to sit down because now I've gone from MC and now I get to be moderator and introduce this extremely awesome panel of folks. So we're not going to do much in terms of formal introductions, but I'm just going to kind of throw questions out to each of you guys as we go, and feel free to say what you do for your organization and chat about kind of what this topic, So, REMI. So Kent, I know from LinkedIn's perspective, early adopter of Grass Valley AMP. You guys have been a early adopter of flight packs that go out and remote cloud operations. So please explain what you guys do, how you integrate REMI into your world.
Certainly. A little background about myself. I am a media systems engineer with LinkedIn. Prior to that, I was a system integrator, and prior to that, I was working with the Pac-12 networks, which was one of the organizations that kind of started really seriously crafting what a REMI was going to be. Back then we called it a multicam production system. And it was just basically being able to take the bare essentials out on site and bringing all that back into a centralized facility so you could cut and produce a final product to go out to your CDN, go out onto the networks in that case. When it comes to corporate video, our CDN isn't broadcast out live. It's only within the company. LinkedIn's owned by Microsoft, so it goes down to mostly to our Teams network, or I think we use Panoptos for backups. We have the same mindset, though, that we have multiple different offices all around the globe, that we have employees that want to be able to hear what the latest updates are or share and provide what they're working on for company all hands. And we employ the same strategy of bringing all the different video feeds in, be it a contribution coming from a Teams or a Zoom channel, or in some cases we do have fly packs, like you had mentioned, where we go and send out higher quality video cameras and send them back to our local facility here in Mountain View, and we cut the show together and we put that out into our Teams channel. So it's a similar process for doing REMIs, and we found it on the corporate side. At Pac-12 it was a lot easier because we had a dedicated 10 gig network between all the schools that was part of the educational research system. When you're in the corporate world, for LinkedIn, we have a very strong backbone, networking backbone, but not all the offices run on a 10 gig. So you have to figure out how to crunch this down into a 1 gig bandwidth. And those are some of the challenges that we work with, and makes it kind of more of an interesting challenge from an engineering background.
And Pac-12, an early adopter and going REMI first model.
Absolutely.
So might touch on that a little bit later. So that's, don't forget, you didn't just work at Diversified and LinkedIn, you worked at Pac-12 at the early days, so love that. Kurt, so I'm a former Microsoft employee, you're at Yahoo. What's the differences between what Yahoo does in its media organization, from your opinion, from broadcast? What's unique to you guys? How does REMI, or I'll get to Mike in a second about HRP, how does that affect you guys, and what's cool?
Yeah, I think what's a little different for us, I'm Kurt Campbell-Anderson. I run the studios over at Yahoo as of recently. And, for us, look, we're a 30-plus-year-old company. The studios there are nearly as old. And we've seen every iteration of it. And in many times and places, we have been firmly in the broadcast production space. But I think as we move forward and, we're different, I think, than certain other places because we're a central service that ends up serving multiple different brands, multiple different audiences, multiple different content strategies that are always evolving on a day-to-day basis, week-to-week basis, and it moves really, really quickly for us. And so for us, as we evolve into kind of this next step of REMI, it becomes a strategic opportunity for us, where we get to look at these tools, look at the most accessible hybrid cloud-based workflow for us that gives us the flexibility to solve for all of those brands' problems really, really quickly. And that's been really impactful for us.
And to make a core facility that serves all of your different entities, they don't have to fit the mold, all of them, but they still got to go through your core facility, and sometimes that can be challenging.
Yeah, absolutely, and that I think becomes one of the challenges to it. How do we put the right building blocks together that can handle all of that in a quick and timely fashion? And it's an ever evolving process. We don't have it solved on any given day, but we're moving forward on it.
It's awesome. Mike, a couple of years ago, I asked you to so kindly, when I was living in Seattle, I said, I'd love to see this little HRP thing you guys are doing. How's that going for you? What's going to be HRP version 2? I'm not calling it REMI 2.0. I'm calling it HRP 2.0.
I appreciate that. We gave up on it. We think this whole distributed production thing was a bit of a fad, really, and I'm not really sure what we're all talking about. But in the interim, we're doing about 70% of our production. We call them HRPs, home run productions. I'm not going to be a slave to ESPN's nomenclature. And it's funny. Do you know what Big Ten calls them? Micers. Now, what that means, I have no earthly idea. But it's basically the same thing, right? That you've got, feeding building blocks to a place to get created at a control room somewhere, right? So we're doing about 65% of our productions that way. And, not NFL. No, I mean, not World Series or anything like that. But college basketball, college football, UFL, some motorsports. It's all done this way. But, we also need to sort of put under the umbrella the way that you can still work from a facility and produce the show from location, right? So I'd say if I include that in terms of the command and control, this is something that we'll introduce yet another acronym, PARC, Production Anywhere Remote Kit. Well, Production Anywhere is basically taking those, EVSs and graphics and maybe support personnel, leaving them at home and still producing the show on site. In fact, the NFL has made it so that it is part of the contract that you produce the show on site. Acknowledging perhaps that there might be another way to do it. So how's it going? It's actually maturing extremely well. And yes, we're into about our third iteration. You might have heard me and Dwayne talk about Brisk. That's another sort of iteration somewhere in between of what we're up to. But we're carrying on what the Big 12 or Big 10 network started, Mitch. Just kidding, and carrying it forward. But like Kent said, this kind of started a lot of it, and Mitch can have his say if he likes, that the schools, were able to leverage those private connectivity, both Pac-12 and Big Ten, to create these kind of efficiencies back when it was actually a hell of a lot harder to do than it is now.
Yeah, totally agree. And it's no longer being relegated to tier 3 for you guys either, right?
Not at all. I mean, if you want to say, okay, Production Anywhere and HRP, 100% of our programming is done with some kind of remote involvement, 100%.
Yeah, take advantage of the wonderful facility in Building 101, to at the very least, your talent core is in LA still. Quick question for you. Are you guys looking outside of LA for folks to dial in remotely into some of those pods?
Oh, for sure. I mean, Dan Turk will tell you we have got a small outpost in Pittsburgh. We had a lot of our, our lead EVS, graphics. We kind of moved the Mountain Mohammed on that one and just said, okay, we'll spin that up. So for NASCAR, we've got 3 or 4 people in Pittsburgh, Charlotte, and then we have people who work out of their house. I mean, our lead radio edit person, our craft edit person, and our radio submixer are all just sitting there at their house with, regular old internet with Starlink backup.
That's awesome. So from a vendor perspective, Matt, you and I have a little bit of a background. I don't have so much. I do have a huge background with Ross. What's Ross doing today, especially on the enterprise side of things, to tell folks on the enterprise side, broadcast is doing it. They're operating, expression. Folks have been sitting at home doing NASCAR for years, running expression from home. Operators, how do we how do we explain to other genres of media teams to go, this is okay, it's a mature offering? What's Ross been doing on that side?
Yeah, so my new role, I don't know how many years we've been doing this now, but we'll see what it is next year. My new role now is market development, focusing on this broadcast AV kind of convergence. So if you follow Avixa and the Infocom channels, like that's where my focus is really pushing. So there's a little bit, I think when we talked before, it was, does corporate demand the Super Bowl, or like what's the point? What are they wanting to do? Even before we were talking here, it's what's the risk tolerance? And there's a little bit of both. There's a lot that corporate is taking from broadcast with the standards and how to create that low risk tolerance for the messaging that matters. But then on the other side, the benefit of AV is we have all of these ways of connecting signal here and there. So broadcast has to also adapt into their environments. And most of the people here who are in Silicon Valley and in places who have been using this for years, this isn't new to those of us necessarily in the room. But now we're changing kind of what REMI is, and we're making sense of it with broadcast focus. So sometimes they're very black and white. Like REMI is these standards, it's SMPTE, it's XYZ, but also can I use a Zoom platform that has this production background? And how do I incorporate those things? How can I leverage them so the end users can understand it, but they can implement some broadcast quality to it? So what's that risk tolerance? How are we able to maximize the impact that the messaging is meant for the audience that's being created for it? In my opinion, and this isn't a hard fact, but over 90% of corporate communication and these systems are all done for internal purposes. It's hardly ever going outside unless it's a finance kind of company who wants to talk to CNBC or they're on the network somewhere. But most of it's internal. It's all internal communication. So how can we leverage both is really what we're trying to develop and enable people to do more with the production quality and the production tools that they're bringing in-house.
I'm going to say the scary statement, do more with less.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And that, I echo that coming from Microsoft. I was shocked when I started working there, and I was like, okay, this is the way broadcast and sports does it. Corporate does it in a completely different way. Seems like the stakes were higher in many circumstances for a lot of the things that we did. They were literal movers and shakers to the market. If your production went off air, there were major implications. So I have a new respect for what a lot of y'all do now. So segue over to Mitch at TATA. What keeps you up at night? And so the concept of REMI, obviously, lots of fiber, lots of connectivity. That isn't so much a problem anymore, right? I mean, people are taking, hey, I can do reverse REMI. And Gary Schneider, your counterpart, Kent, had talked about that's something you guys are doing a lot of these days. Can you touch on a little bit of how things are working for you guys in REMI right now?
Sure. Hey, everyone. Mitch Rosenthal. I head up business development around the production and enterprise pieces of the business here in America, but also touching some of the global stuff. Overall, I mean, 35% of the subsea fiber is owned and operated by TATA. It gives us a really good jumping off point for a lot of the infrastructure we have in general. We look at ourselves as pretty much a 360 transmission company. So we will use various types of transmission. I mean, when you get into different layers of production, I mean, Mike Davies is on the stage right now. Some of his tier one sports productions, they're going to use SRT as part of that main broadcast. But for a world feed, for instance, probably not going to do that. For us, like, we have all this infrastructure under the ocean. The Switch acquisition gave us a pretty good stronghold here in the States that now ties into the rest of the global network. So when we're talking to these global entities, we're able to help facilitate anywhere in the world. We've got NOCs around the world. You'll always have that 24/7 monitoring. You'll also have the ultra low latency that is absolutely required. So yeah, I mean, everything that all these gentlemen had said, we help facilitate every type of that type of production.
And my head's spinning because as the lasers get better, there becomes more frequencies on the light. I can only imagine, to me, it just seems like, especially with XS and whatever the next generation. I mean, I'm going to get to latency in a second here because to me that's a big component to this conversation of REMI. But do you see customers paying less? Are they shrinking down their bills and going to more SRT compression and saying, yeah, we only need 20 megs. We don't need that, 3 gigabit per second or excess feed?
Absolutely depends on the type of content. So it's how much risk are you willing to take? Sports rights alone, we just keep seeing more zeros added to that. You're going to use SRT as part of your workflow, probably not your primary. I just heard about investor meetings with if you do stumble, it could affect your stock price. Same thing. That is their Super Bowl. That is their Olympics, and they treat it as such.
So I'm a Seattle Seahawks fan. Sorry to many of you that are from here. I just came from the NFC Championship game, so my voice is a little actually lower than it normally is. So I do want to make a compliment. I said this to you earlier today. That game, I watched the YouTube TV 4K version. It was almost like I was watching 3D. It was that good. So that was the Cadillac of the production. Brand new truck. The cameras were phenomenal. The lenses, probably, $300,000 lenses on some of those cameras. How do you all see your customers or your own groups deal with the good enough statement? Like, it's good enough. People can't resolve those pixels any differently. So frankly, I think I was looking at 1080p, even though it was called the Fox 4K feed. How do from your own world, so this is an open question, anybody in the panel, feel free to speak up. How early on in those conversations did those good enough conversations happen? Because it could make a difference of, hundreds of thousands of dollars, or put more risk in the game because now you've got 6 fiber feeds that are all, how do you all navigate that world? Because to me, that's a big finance conversation.
Yeah, I'd say you have that conversation early on when they try to take that PTZ camera that's in the back of the room and zoom it in, and they don't really have control over it, and they're connecting it with a touch panel, and it's all the way in, and it's grainy, and it doesn't look good, and there is no graphics. It's, can I switch this? And someone on the side of the room, an assistant, is trying to control that camera, but also then putting up a full screen PowerPoint presentation. And like you said, an investor call, that's a big deal. That's your perception. That's how your marketing might leverage some things. And if you look like that on paper or on video, then on paper that might translate negatively. So the good enough, it's all a risk tolerance to some extent, but that's when we really start having those conversations. The systems that we put in place aren't cutting it anymore. The camera is probably the most important part of that, honestly. And when you upgrade the camera, in most points, you have to upgrade the infrastructure. There's no way around it. Then how you transmit that is up to you. Pick your flavor. Like you said, we can do most any transmission nowadays and integrate it. So that's where I see a lot of that.
It was an amazing thing during the pandemic to see, like, hey, we have to have 1080p, and 95% of our sources was a Teams call when I was at Microsoft, which was no more than, say, 10 megabits per second. So, and the amount of storage we had to pay to store all those ISO feeds of a 10 megabit signal being stored at 1080p. How do we Lego in, kind of the, so the next question, I'm going to actually transition a little bit off of that. With distributed folks, distributed team, where is the line in your worlds about where people go, okay, we're going to have an EIC at site, we're going to, we're going to minimize the amount of travel, all that stuff's been said for many years in terms of savings. Have we seen negative effects of doing distributed productions? Is there, I don't mean to be a, Debbie Downer here, but what are the downsides, if there are to talk to any, just out of curiosity?
I would say there's probably fewer risks in the corporate enterprise than there is in the sports world. Especially since we're mostly just doing talking heads and PowerPoints. We're trying to connect dots between ideas, which are really important to be able to be, especially when you want to have a free-flowing conversation of ideas, new ideas talking about AI and whatever your content is. You don't want to be able to have that 1 second delay when somebody from Bangalore is asking you a pertinent question to your CEO. Your CEO needs to be able to respond and not respond with any loss of credibility because there's a glitch or a jitter from your team's call.
Yeah, or a 2 second answer.
Or a 2 second
later.
delay, waiting for that send and receive signal. Obviously, from my time at sports, it was much more critical that everything be in sync and in time, because you've got moving picture, you've got fast action, and that adds a whole nother level of, hey, if not only the content you're trying to explain to everyone, but also like what they actually see.
Yeah.
It's more than what they hear, it's what they actually see. They can see that glitch in the video, they can see that, oh, pixelation is starting to happen as somebody is moving or throwing something really fast, where you don't have that fast motion.
Yep.
Most of the pixels are static on the screen when you're in a corporate enterprise.
How about you at Yahoo?
Yeah, I was going to say that, to say what you said, Kent, that in a live sports environment, that's going to be a very different conversation. But I think oftentimes for us, we're not at that level of critical sense there. And if we're talking about a control room chemistry that's coming out of a nonverbal communication, that people are being able to react with that, we're also bringing in new content creators who've grown up in that world. They've grown up in a quote-unquote REMI world of remote classes, remote play dates, doing Call of Duty online with their friends, and still managing to win the game. And so I think it's important for us to, in the right environments, recognize that there's an adaptation coming, and it's worth us leaning into that, because we're going to find a way to do it, and it's not going to cause a huge upset.
One of my first experiences in Seattle with IP was when Mira, now NEP, had one of their first 2110 trucks, and I just remember Norm Ragsdale pulling his hair out. How are you guys doing on the folks, the EICs on the trucks now with the basically rolling data centers?
Yeah, well, actually, in some ways, it's actually great, because you have people coming out of school right now with computer science degrees and EE degrees, and they already know 70% of what you're doing. Versus like this kind of dark arts of like broadcast engineering that nobody really teaches, and you kind of find out on the road. So in case for that, it's good. Bad is that with IP, it's either there or it ain't. And, usually when the problems happen with IP, they usually happen in a very big, noticeable way. And, even for, what we had going on in the C Championship, up until 2 hours before the event, none of the cameras could actually talk to the truck, through some kind of, some sort of esoteric problem with, networking or some other shit I don't understand. But either way, it all got worked out. Right? So, that is the issue with IP, is that it is wildly, wildly capable. I don't need to tell people in this room that, but I will tell you that when it goes, it goes. And to have those backups out there, that's when you got to put your broadcast hat on, and know that, if you got to put two cans in a string together to make something work, that you've got that there. And a piece of copper sometimes might be your only lifeline for between life and death.
Backup, backup, backup. Yeah.
Also, I would add to that monitoring and observability, which is a nice plus with the networking portion posted at baseband SDI. We get alerts constantly if any of our equipment IP drops off the network, so we know right away.
Yep.
Oh, this piece of equipment is having an issue. We don't have to be in the facility to hear the beeping fan that's going in the back of the truck or in the CER to be like, oh, something's wrong. Maybe we should go look at that. So the instant monitoring is helpful.
And I'll tell you something else, Ken. It makes power a hell of a lot more important. I mean, not like you can't do a show without power. The thing is, you lose power. Now you're not down for the 10 minutes it takes to fire everything up. You're down for as long as those 1,000 computers or so can boot up. And I don't know, even my desktop, I boot it up once in a while and it don't work, right? So imagine, booting up 1,000 of them on a truck in a hurry. It is not fun, and been through that one before too.
Okay. And that's not just REMI problem. That's just where we're at today problem.
It's just an IP problem,
Yeah.
And power sucks these days too.
Yeah. Solar panels everywhere. Matt, so from a glue perspective, when you guys are asked to interoperate with other vendors in a either be it a REMI environment or just in general, what is Ross doing to help kind of, and I'm kind of throwing you a softball question because I kind of know what you're going to say, but I'd love to hear it anyway because it's good to hear. What is Ross doing to work better with everybody else in the sandbox?
Just that. What we like to say is Ross plays well with others in general. And what is good about broadcasts as a whole and as a standard with SMPTE is that there is something that everyone follows for the most part. The challenge and what Ross does to adapt is how does the AV play into that. So how do I take the IP and put it into the same infrastructure that's taking in the fiber, the copper, whatever else, the NDI? I mean, all of it can live inside one box. So you have to play well with others. You have to make it adaptable to whatever the environment is, because you might have people in a studio where they're running all baseband, but then you have contributors that are coming over public internet. You might have SRT feeds from your 3 other sites across the globe, and all of it needs to land at the same time, and it has to be, reference and sync, and you have to have all of these things working in tandem, talking both ways in all the different ways at the same time. So for me, I've been in the customer point of view where I was the customer, which is what makes this fun and easy, is because I got to live it. And so really it's that the ability to adapt to what the market is calling for and how they want to leverage these transmit signals and how they want to leverage communication types. So playing well with others is super important across the board, and a lot of other companies do it very well too. And I think as long as we continue in that vein of solving the problem that the customer has and making sure they can connect and share their message, then we'll all be able to keep building really good systems.
So this is one of the reasons I helped. I was one of the folks that helped start this whole thing we do here. Started when I was at Microsoft Production Studios because I wanted what SVG had. And this is exactly I just had to put that comment out there. I love what this is because it does put you guys in front of customers at these kinds of events, so you can hear, hey, I have this issue with that product and those guys, and they were finger pointing, and it's like, that's why this is awesome to me. So I just had to stick that in there. I got one last comment. Sorry, Mitch, we're going to leave you off this particular topic, but I'm going to lead with you on this next one. And I say this on every conversation I have, whether it's a session or a panel or I'm sitting in your seats. What are we doing to get more talent in our industry? This is not a REMI specific question, but I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on that. How do we attract more people?
Yeah, I love that. I've been with the company 2.5 years, and we've actually, in that time, like in LA Film School, Syracuse University, I mean, I can keep going. We've been involved with the schools directly, getting a student flow in. I mean, Mike was poking fun earlier. I was at Riot in the mid-2010s, and we really did. I mean, one of the guys on my team started as a professional video game player. Now he became a director, technical director. Multi-purpose operators, as we were talking earlier, these are people that have been playing games, communicating, doing 8 different things at the same time. So we're creating a funnel, and we've been hiring at the Switch and TATA over the last 2.5 years.
Kent, I know you got some stuff on that from our prep call.
Yeah. I mean, I want to give a shout out to John Shanky actually with ASG, and he's done a really good job of putting SMPTE education courses together in all at least in the Bay Area here, but also in Southern California, and all the UC systems. And San Francisco State University had a newer creative arts build that I was a part of when I was with Diversified. And I was able to speak to a lot of the students there. It's like when I went to that school, I went there because I was interested in being in front of the camera, doing directing, and that served me for a little bit. But I kept adding that question of why. Why does it have to be this way? Why does it have to be built this way? I want to do something different, and it led me down a dark path to become an engineer, which is a whole other story. But it helped encourage the kids. It's like, hey, well, not even kids, young students to say, hey, this is something that you can start with a passion here, and if you keep growing with it, you can really help build a whole new industry and a whole new way of workflows.
Any other comments from anybody on that? Because that's an important one for me.
I'll just say that, just following up my comment before, I think we need to evangelize this area of professionalism to let kids know who are in engineering schools that this is even an option. And I've seen it happen where kids who just get a runner job just to make a few bucks, and then they're like, wait a minute, I can actually talk to these engineers and I actually know what they're talking. It happened to me in Nashville with a fantastic woman from Vanderbilt University, and that day at Nashville, wherever the hell that racetrack was foundationally transformative to her life. And it just made me think, man, there's got to be so many more people out there like that. So if there's anything, it's just evangelize what it is. Don't go after, certainly go after the people who already know what this is, but also go after the ones that don't, because I think we're leaving a lot of them out.
And I think there's a contingent coming here at the end of the day, too. They're going to be meandering around. So if you see some students, please feel free to interact with them, introduce yourself to them, and Yeah, it's an important thing. Any last comments on the session topic? Everybody else good? We are actually at time. Thank you, folks. Thank you for joining, panel. Appreciate your time.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.